So you've figured out what LARP is, maybe found an event that you want to play at, and now you actually want to register yourself for your first LARP event. But should you register yourself as a player or as an NPC? That is actually quite a debate, and that's what this video will be all about. I'm gonna spoil you the ending. It depends. There are arguments for both sides, and that's exactly what this video is going to be about. So at the end, you can hopefully make an informed decision and register yourself as either a player or an NPC at your first LARP. So without further ado, let's get digging. But first, I've already mentioned some terms that I'll explain first. Player versus NPC. The difference is really simple. As a player, you have agency and make your own decisions. You've either written your own character or you've gotten a character from the organization, and the weekend or the day you're going to play that single character. You're going to make all the decisions yourself. Nothing is given by the plot on what you have to do. And that's the difference between NPC, monster, extra. Different LARPs have different names for them. As an NPC, you're going to play a character that the story needs. Say for example, we were all playing in a village and a horde of angry farmers is going to attack the village. The horde of angry farmers is played by the NPCs. You're getting a role from the organization that has a goal or something that it has to achieve in the game. Either just cause more drama or actually fight stuff. All of that would be called NPC. There are arguments for and against registering yourself as a player or NPC at a first LARP. And I'm not going to give you a clear-cut answer, because in the end it all depends on you. It depends on you, on the LARP you choose, and what it is that you want to do in a LARP. For example, as a player in a LARP, you often get to write your own character. If you are someone who likes to write stories, think of backgrounds and think of how a person is in a world, then player might be a way to start for you. As a player, you get to often write your own character, build your own costume, and turn up at the event without any knowledge of what's going to happen on the weekend, other than the information that's given on the site. So generally that will be the world building and the skills that you can play. If you're someone that can go to a website of a LARP, read the world that they wrote, read the skill book, and think, ooh, I really like those skills and I'm really curious how they play out in a game and how these skills interact with each other, that would be points towards getting started as a player. You can get to explore and discover the world of the LARP by yourself at your own pace. This can also be a downside. If you are going to a LARP, your very first LARP, on your own and you don't know anyone there, and you know that you have some problem getting in contact with other people, that might be more difficult. Then again, that can also be helped by going to a LARP with some friends. It's never a bad idea that if you have some friends that are LARPing, to just join them. They can take you along in their game, give you some plot points and hooks or stuff that you can start playing with, and generally introduce you to the world. If you're someone that easily makes new contacts, likes to get involved with everything, and just is okay with just wandering in somewhere and asking what's going on, then you can definitely also start on your own without knowing anyone as a player. Another thing that's a bonus when starting as a player, which I already briefly mentioned before, is that you don't get any backstage knowledge of the LARP. Compare it with going to a theater. You're sitting there in the audience just experiencing the play without getting any knowledge of what's going on backstage. I mean, the backstage could be on fire, but if you're there sitting in the audience just enjoying the play, you don't get to know anything about that. It's, in a way, experiencing the LARP while preserving the magic of the LARP. That is not to say that you can't get started on your first LARP as an NPC. There are definitely pros and cons to both sides. For NPC, for example, you don't need your own costume. You generally can just turn up in black clothing and a fitting belt, and they give you all your costumes. You also don't need to worry about writing your character beforehand. You can just turn up and play whatever is needed. Which is also a nice way for your first LARP just to get to experience different kinds of roles and what it is that fits you most. Whether it's a talking role or a fighting role or anything in between. Generally, if you say, hey, I'd like to try this, they can be accommodating and give you a role like that. This does mean that you need to be able to switch And it also means that occasionally you can't really take a break if you really want to, because your role is needed right at that point. On the other hand, NPCing can also mean waiting and waiting and waiting. Because at some point players will say, oh, we're going to the forest to do this thing, and you're getting all kitted up, all the NPCs are getting ready, and the players get distracted. Yeah, we're going to the forest in about half an hour, so you're sitting there waiting half an hour. Players still getting ready, and oh, we're going now, wait, we're still missing someone. You're sitting there as an NPC waiting to go to the forest. And yeah, like that, players can take their time occasionally, which means that NPCing can be a lot of waiting. On the other hand, generally there is a dedicated space for the NPCs to hang out when they're not in-game. This also means that in between the roles you play, you get to talk to your other NPCs out of game. You get to talk about whatever you just experienced, you get to make friends with them, or just chit-chat about pretty much everything. It can be a nice break in between the game, and in this time you can also get tips or tricks or just talk about LARP in general, what other people like, and just basically get a more meta overview of what LARP is. But then again, this is something that should suit you. If you're someone that likes to write their own backstory and just wants to experience a game really at their own pace, while staying in-game at all times, then playing might be more for you. For example, usually when I go to a new LARP event with a new character, the first event, quite a lot of time is spent just sitting in a chair. Sitting in a chair and experiencing everything that's just happening around me. Seeing what other people are playing, what they're doing. Basically just getting a feeling for the event. I mean, on your first event, you don't have to dive into everything immediately. It can be a lot more fun, but just sitting there experiencing the game and just seeing is also a completely valid way to play LARP. Especially on your first events when you don't really know what's going on. Just get a feeling for it. Whereas as an NPC you have to do stuff or you're not going to experience the game at all. Then there are also some practical things that I briefly touched on before. As a player you have to buy your own costume, you have to get your own kit. For your very first LARP this does not need to be super elaborate, but at least make sure you got a nice in-game shirt, pants and hiking boots or anything else that's not too obviously modern. Whereas as an NPC, you just need black or otherwise dark underclothing and a fitting belt and you're good to go. That can be a practical consideration on whether you want to go to a LARP or not. If you don't want to invest as much money into something when you're not sure you're going to actually enjoy it, you might want to start as an NPC because that's slightly less investment. On the other hand, first time costumes do not have to be expensive, but there are plenty of other videos about that. Slightly related to this, if you're going to an event as an NPC, quite often, but not always, events give you a discount on your ticket. Players are being seen as the ones truly experiencing the LARP, and NPCing in a way is slightly more on the volunteering side, so often there is a slight discount on your NPC ticket. This does not mean that NPCing is seen as less than playing, but this difference is there, and it's a thing that can be taken into consideration. All in all, there is a lot of things you can take into consideration when you want to start your first LARP as a player or an NPC. And the points I mentioned before are not everything. It can also be very LARP specific. For example, there are LARPs that I look through the website and I'm like, I like this concept, but I can't really see myself either fully playing this or I can't really envision a character that I like in this world. In that case, I register as an NPC. Or there can be LARPs where I look through the website and immediately a character pops into mind and I want to weave it into the world and play with all the skills and experience all the things. Then I would register as a player. As a player, you really get to experience the world. You can go on quests, you can go dungeoneering, solve all the puzzles. Whereas as an NPC, you're just facilitating it. You usually already know the outcome of the puzzles, the dungeoneering, and you're just making sure that everything goes smoothly and the players are having fun, by usually creating more drama. It's a thing in LARP. So that's also a thing. It's a different way of experiencing the same story and you really have to decide which one suits you better. Would you like to facilitate stuff, know the outcome, know what you have to do? Or would you like to experience everything? Do the dungeoneerings, do the quests, do the puzzles. They're both completely valid, but in a different way. There are also LARPs where if you're registering as an NPC, that will mean that you'd have to do lots of fighting roles. Whereas you can be a player in that same LARP and decide not to join in any of the fighting at all. That is something you can take into consideration. If you know yourself that you don't like the fighting aspect of LARP, do not register as an NPC to a LARP where the NPCs will do a lot of fighting. Vice versa, if you're someone that loves fighting and you know that the NPCs are going to do a lot of fighting, that might be a bonus point towards registering as an NPC. It's, like I said, it's not just NPCing versus playing, it's also in the context of the LARP, whatever you like most. So, pretty much with any video that I make about getting started with LARP, I recommend to find some events that you like, read through the website, whatever fits you, because even LARPs in the same genre can have way different takes on things and have just a slightly different nuances in the way that they play or approach the genre that fits you better or not. So definitely read through the websites, find all the information about a LARP, make a decision on which LARP speaks to you, and then look at, does it speak to me on the way of playing, or does it speak to me on the way of NPCing? Like I said, this video is not going to give you a clear-cut answer and you will have to do some research. But I hope this video did give you some insights in the differences between playing and NPCing and arguments you can make in favor of one or the other, and give you some arguments in favor of one or the other and have you make a better informed decision. And with that, thank you all for watching, see you guys next time, and if you have registered for a LARP as a player, you might want to check out this video for the next, what I think is the most fun step of creating a character for a LARP.